There are people living in Dubuque who have no place to call home. They are mothers and fathers, children, aunts and uncles, friends. They are people just like us with hopes, fears, and problems. But unless we look for them, we won't easily recognize them. One person calls them ghost people. They don't carry signs identifying themselves as homeless. Often we will see them walking downtown streets, sitting in parks, or in other public facilities. But they may shop at the malls, dine in restaurants, or live on the West End, and you don't even see them. Whether it's deliberate avoidance or unconscious naivete, we often miss seeing those who are in need.
By the time we meet someone who is mentally ill or homeless, they are in crisis. All of their options have been exhausted, and if law enforcement can help, it is only temporary.
Promised I'd stay sober today. So I don't know what it's like. I don't really care. Got hurt at work. Now I don't work at all. No one wants me. No one understands what I go through. Sometimes I'm lucky if I get a place to stay for the night. Otherwise, it's out on a bench or underneath a culvert or somewhere. Anywhere we try to stay warm. This time of year it's especially hard. I just don't care. No one knows what it's like. People walking by, they think I'm just something. They don't really care about me. They don't realize that I'm a person. I'm just something for them to look down on. I don't know why. It's like they got it so easy. They don't have to do the things that I do just to make it through my day. I am a person. I don't know why they can't see that I'm a person just like them. It could happen to them too. They could be right where I'm at. I don't care.
I got arrested again last night. What'd you do? Sleeping in the parking garage. Where else was I supposed to go?
They can arrest you for that?
Typically, law enforcement do not arrest people for sleeping in the parks, parking ramps, or other public places. If someone is arrested, it's usually because they are intoxicated under the influence of drugs or urinating in public.
Went to the shelter. Never really thought about those before. There was no room. They were full up. Never thought about that either. A lot of things you don't think about. Got your head down and running things. Worried about your problems.
If they are fortunate, they live in shelters organized by Dubuque religious organizations located in or near downtown. Some sleep on couches or mattresses with relatives or friends. If they have an income, some live in motels that offer weekly or monthly rates. School buses stop at area motels to pick up children. Some live in boarding houses or substandard apartments.
When I was growing up, I had my own misconceptions on what a homeless person was like and why they were homeless. I pretty much thought that people chose that. They made bad decisions and that put them there. Once they got there, they chose to be there, that there was help. But then I experienced it for myself. When I was 18, I moved to the big city. And I got a job and got an apartment, was working, doing the things I was supposed to do. And one day I came home from work and the apartment that I lived in was on fire. The firemen weren't even trying to put it out at that point. It had burned to the ground. Everything I owned, instantly gone. And there I was, homeless, with nothing but the clothes on my back. Every relative or family member was 3,000 miles away. I spent a few nights in parking ramps, which is pretty cold and miserable, hard cement, sleeping in a corner, waiting for the morning for the businesses to open so I could go in and sit. Coffee shops, places like that where you could go in and sit down and be warm. Then one day I found an abandoned house and I lived there for about 8 months. Of course, there were no utilities, so there was no electricity, there was no water, nothing of that sort. It was shelter, which was nice, but it was very dirty.
Some live in their vehicles, or in cardboard shelters, or in a cave, or under bridges, or pitch tents in remote wooded areas.
Where did you say you're living?
My car. I'm living in my car.
He left me. I had very limited choices. And I chose to continue to live the way that I was accustomed to living. But I just don't live in the type of home that I should be living in. Where I lay my head at night is not as important to me as where I spend my days and my evenings, my weekends. And maybe there is a government program for me. I just don't understand how it would work for me. I refuse. There's no way. So I figure it out.
Maybe our anger at the homeless is because we see traits in them that we reject within ourselves. Neediness, vulnerability, lack of control, and powerlessness. Homelessness is a reality that is lived out by many people, defined and redefined by the government, and served by the compassionate.
As a teacher, I think that I had to deal with a lot of issues involving homelessness with young adults who were living adult lives while their age was still a child. And so many of them, the really big issue was that they had nowhere to belong outside of the school. And that was very hard for me as a teacher, because where's that line then? I'm supposed to teach you and I'm supposed to keep order in the classroom, but I know darn well you didn't have a place to sleep last night and that's why you're sleeping in my room. So do I wake you up or do I let you sleep? Because I know right now you really need that sleep.
Overall, teen homelessness is a very big problem. It's something that's kind of going underneath the radar screen because they double up, they sleep, they don't want to tell anybody about their situation. But it is very much alive and very much of an issue, and I don't believe I think we're barely touching the tip right now.
I had lots of students who I knew that on Fridays they didn't know where they were going to sleep that night or how their weekend was going to go or what they were going to eat. I didn't know if I was going to see them again on Monday because they might have gotten in trouble over the weekend, or maybe to find a place to be for a little while, they had to leave the town. And then they would show up again a couple weeks later, and we'd have to kind of pick up where we left off. Another really hard thing I think for me was the whole issue of food. The schools, and I understand why, are focusing on good nutrition and no bad snacks and only school lunches, but these kids are so hungry and they don't want food in the classroom because of bugs and critters, but they're so hungry, and no kid's gonna listen to me talk about John Steinbeck when all they can think about is that they're hungry.
I was just 16, I believe. It was the fall of that year. At the time, stepfather and mother were going through a really rough patch in their married life, and it got to the point that it became very physical, and then we were asked to leave by my stepfather. And we traveled to Dubuque, and my mother went to the battered women's shelter. I basically spent my days going to different places. You know, there's a lot of things that you can do if you're smart about it. The library, laundromats, the mall. For about 2 to 3 weeks until my mother did finally get an apartment, I was relying on my friends who were older than me, who didn't necessarily have parents, and the ability to, like I said, just basically go to public venues and spend a lot of time there to keep warm. I had minimal clothing. Everything that we had been left behind, so I think I had at the time like 2 pairs of pants and 3 t-shirts to my name. So there was a lot of washing in public bathrooms, you know, dumping it in the sink, using the hand soap that was available to get things clean, and then just, you know, as far as like food would go, my friends would usually feed me, and life went different directions for me. But for that 2 to 3 weeks, it was definitely an eye-opening experience. It was very different than I come from, you know, lower class anyway, but there's a big difference between being poor but having a roof over your head and food in the fridge and being, well, where am I staying tonight?
When I'm out on the streets, I meet people where they are. And my main focus is to accept the person for he or she is, and to respect them for that. It's they who call the shots. I'm there to listen and to see how I can help.
We are talking about people who are in need of very basic things: shelter, food, clothing. And somehow I think that appeals to everybody. Wants that. Everybody needs that.
It was about 4 or 5 years ago that I began to really get interested in homelessness. My first interest was raised when I worked at Iowa Workforce Development, and ran into people who were just out of prison or the Elm Street Correctional Facility, and saw the extreme difficulty that they had in getting jobs, and many of them really did not have a place to stay. They were quite literally homeless. I got involved with the Downtown Dubuque Christian Outreach, which had been doing a study of homelessness for quite a few years. Come to find out, since then, as I've become more involved, while we have a great many shelters in Dubuque, we're not able to serve everyone. We have, first of all, some people who, for whatever reason, will not stay at a shelter. This is a deliberate decision on their part. It might have to do with mental illness, perhaps some other reason, but clearly we have people who we are not able to reach.
You have a plan. You're going forward thinking that you know what can happen and what's going to go on for you, what is a possibility for you, and something happens, something comes out of left field, and you couldn't have planned on it, you couldn't have foreseen it, you couldn't have even imagined that that was a possibility. And that loss of control and that loss of being able to take care of yourself can be just devastating, not just in that moment, but then it's like, a slow erosion of whether or not you feel like you're capable of doing anything anymore. Are you really capable of going back to school? Are you really capable of being a good husband or wife? Are you really capable of even being a good person, let alone a good parent? The idea that no matter how hard you try to plan for something, no matter how well you set yourself up to succeed, there's going to be this invisible like bowling ball that's just going to come by and knock you down, and you can't do anything about it. It's terrifying.
Things were so good at one point. Oh my gosh, my wife and I, we both had decent jobs, good jobs. We came here to be my parents, and we bought this house, and the realtor, we told her our price range, and she went above it a little bit, and we figured, well, we've got these 2 jobs, we could maybe handle these payments, and so we got this house, and it was beautiful for a while, and then things started to happen. My mother got sick, and we started taking care of her. She didn't do very well for a long time, and there was no life insurance, and we had to bury her. The kids had come along, and we had the kids in daycare for the first year and 2 years, and my wife had left her job, and my job disappeared, and we started to feel behind on some of the payments. The house is going to the bank, but I don't have any place to go yet. I can't even get an apartment to approve me right now. Didn't have a bankruptcy on our credit report, and so we're taking an extended camping trip. We're gonna camp for a couple of months until I can figure out what's going on. We've got the car packed up, and we're gonna go off, and we'll make the best of it.
I've learned that people who don't have a roof over their heads or need a place to stay are pretty much like me and have similar hopes and aspirations.
And I find wherever I go, whether it's overseas or in the United States, people have the same needs. They're human beings, and they have the same need, no matter what their culture, no matter what their denomination. They're human beings that need to be respected as people with dignity.
Think about what you have to offer. How can you use your influence to engage in the community? Will you share your time, your talents, or your treasures with the ghost people around you? I can choose to cross the street to avoid being near a homeless person, or I can cross the street toward that person to welcome them, to recognize them.